So let's talk about who is accessing your API and why would you care and what you should do. One of the reasons is because you don't want this to let this guy in the door. You know, he's going to mess up your coat racks, mess up your inventory, hassle your customer service reps, and escape out of the reach of your security crew. That's my son Joshua when he was a bit younger, and he's still sometimes a troublemaker. But I'm an app dev guy. As Pam mentioned, I'm a services guy, an API guy. I know enough about security to be dangerous. You guys are the experts. So for a session, let's just suspend the security conversation. This won't be a session about how to keep the bad guys out of your API fortress. Instead, it'll be about how to drive the API economy, how you can monetize API traffic to drive revenue and business growth. And we'll connect the dots between identity, APIs, IoT, and that plethora of specifications and acronyms that you guys know and love, and I just struggle to keep up with. So how do we increase revenue opportunities? At the most basic level, it's all about connecting with that next customer, all about connecting with that customer to drive the next business transaction. And APIs today are how we drive business on the internet, across the world, on our mobile devices, and even within our stores. The world is shifting where APIs are not just about devices, they're not just about a single transaction, they're driving entire ecosystems. So let's talk about some steps that you can use to drive. You know, one is to connect identity with the Internet of Things. So it's very interesting when we run the thread of identity across all of the devices that we use today, and it enables us to increase our customer intimacy. We now know how our users are interacting with our products throughout the entire life cycle. So we need to associate the customer with the device and then monitor their usage throughout the life cycle with the product. This requires an identity intersection between us and things, between carbon and silicon. Also, APIs can be used to drive your business ecosystem. And especially if you connect identity with the APIs, you can understand how much of your revenue is driven by partners. You can set up a multi-tiered monetization model where you're not only selling directly to end customers, but you're selling through a channel. And that channel is interacting with you through an API. So you have to know if there's a middleman in the middle that's acting on behalf of the customer. You're layering identities on top of each other and driving the business forward. So step one of all this is to know your customer. You know, so some of us like to play golf. You know, here's me out on the links with a few colleagues. And when we checked into the hotel or made our hotel reservation, did they ask if we like to play golf? You know, does the property know the customers? Does the conference know the customers? Know what their pursuits are? Know what their hobbies are? How do you connect the dots? Well, we'll show you a few ways about how you can learn about your customer. And there are 5 different dimensions that I'll briefly describe. 1, identify the user. So we need to connect the old school SAML infrastructure with the new school hipster OAuth infrastructure and be able to pass through identities such as a SAML grant token all the way to the back-end system. In the 25 minutes that Pam allotted me here, I can't go into in-depth about all the flows, and I'll show a few more of these slides. But it's fairly straightforward. There's only 6 steps on the screen. But the importance here is that we're passing that identity all the way through to the back end. For example, by using JSON Web Tokens, or otherwise JWT, to pass the credentials and the identity back. Also, we need to identify the application. Over breakfast yesterday, there was an interesting conversation that I dropped in on, which was talking about, well, what does it mean to have a token? And can that token be associated with an application, and why? And what's this stuff about consumer secrets and keys and refresh ratios? And is a token actually safe and secure or not? So there's ways for us to think about the best practices in this emergent space. And also we need to layer governance around these new and emergent specifications. Not access a unique identifier for the device. Apple actually knows a universal identifier in every device that they ship. However, because of privacy concerns, they've locked down access, and applications cannot get to the device identifier. So people are coming up with workarounds, and I was trying to find some open source projects, trying to find some good recommendations. And I think it's still an emerging space. Also, you need to think about cross-ecosystem support for Apple, Androids, Windows phones, whatever the next phone is out there, or even other devices. So, which takes us back to good old certificates, which requires a enrollment and provisioning cycle. I was in the session with the name band guy who was talking about how you provision a wearable device with a biometric certificate and attach my identity to the device. It seems to be a cumbersome process. It's another workflow for you to introduce. But it's valuable because if you know the device, then you can enforce endpoint access rules. For example, you can know if the device properly containerizes data and prevents data leakage. Lastly, location. So here I'm going to be a little self-aggrandizing, show off a few places that I've been around the world. Me in front of the Sydney Opera, in front of the London Eye, at the shopping mall in Beijing, and then also, out at the utility plant, doing some good old data collection next to the coal railroad tracks. But location is important because we can either lock down access to specific resources if we have our security hat on, but also we can enforce monetization rules and monetization policies. When I'm outside the country, well, don't provide me with that movie feed. We're going to violate some international treaty about copyright, or the business models between exclusive distribution of content within regions. So we need mechanisms to identify the device. And this was another interesting conversation, this time at lunch yesterday, which focused about how do we actually know where the device is? GeoIP, well, that's like kind of fuzzy, right? Easily hacked, easily spoofed, tunnels, Tor networks, all that good stuff that I like to use. But another one is if the device is connecting directly with a carrier that has a trusted connection, you can tie into their APIs. such as the GSMA API and the Mobile Connect APIs. Now, coverage and support per carrier, per region might be a little spotty. The carrier networks are very balkanized. So you need to tread lightly here, but it might work for specific locale environments. So throughout this thread of identity, we need to upgrade our identity infrastructure to support an API economy. Additionally, think very clearly about whether you should be externalizing identity as an API. Talk with your identity provider about whether they support these use cases and protocols. I'm not the expert here, Pam is, and others in the room, my former colleagues at Birding Group and Gartner. Talk to them about the best ones, evaluate the vendor landscape carefully, and make the right investments based on business revenue and growth. All right, do we know what our consumer wants? So, if I just step out here and, pass out my business card and, pass one out to you and pass one out to you, pass one out to you. Is that what you really came here for? Is that why you came to my API? Probably not. You guys don't really seem very interested in learning my telephone number. So it's the same with your business. Do you know why that person walked in the store? What's their intent? The infamous Doc Searles wrote a whole book on this concept called the intention economy, which turns marketing upside down. It turns business upside down. I was out in Vegas a few years ago talking to some media people, and they were talking about over-the-top delivery of video, content on demand. And they're trying to understand what people want. And my reaction, just ask them. Just ask them. So you have identity, add intent. Add what that person really wants. Do they want my phone number? Do they want a job? Do they want a recommendation on the best API management solution out there? Do they want referrals to consultants that can help them with their identity project? So don't make your API be agnostic to intent. The third step is understand context. These are attributes around the API interaction. This is what flavors the response of your API. And it's driven, again, by who's coming to you and who you are. What's the identity of your API? Who is that API representing? For example, your brand. I've been talking with the Blackstone property portfolio companies. And there's very distinct brands, whether it's Hilton, Motel 6, La Quinta. The social context. Is this interaction with your API tainted by poor recommendations, poor customer service to this thing, user, application coming to my API? It influences how I respond in a business scenario. If I walk in the door and I'm talking with you, and there's 10 customer support tickets that you've opened up on my product. Or I know that your CIO, loves the business arrangement and loves the golf trip that we went on together. Also, what's the environment around the interaction? Is it heavily trafficked? Is it lightly trafficked? Are there potholes in the road? Which takes us to blending context with intent. We know who you are, your identity. We know what you want because we've looked up your customer profile and we have asked you where you're going. For example, I want to go to the airport. this afternoon. I'll have about a 30-minute window to arrive. So that's my intent. What's the context? Are there traffic jams? Is there road construction? And we can mash up all of this information and build an intelligent API, which will result in more satisfied customers who will tip more, buy more, and come back to interact with us more. How do we do this? Well, we make APIs identity aware and blend in analytics. For example, not only the traditional batch analytics, running nightly jobs to understand where people are, who's going, who's checking in, who's checking out, who should check in, but also real-time analytics to make on-the-fly decisions based on, say, temporal-based pattern matching, knowing my path down the road and redirecting me, making me new offers as I browse across the coat racks. Also, there's the concept of predictive analytics, integrating identity with past performance indicators, performing machine learning to drive better yield management, optimize revenue, consider where to enter into new markets. All of these decisions, you guys are at the center because you're the ones who own the customer, who know the customer, and can blend all of these contexts and intents together. So after we've laid the foundation, step 1, 2, 3, 4, now we're ready to really monetize our relationships, monetize our API traffic. It's not just about setting service level tiers and directly monitoring usage, monetizing usage. You know, that's great. That's level 0 on the API economy. It's more about the indirect revenue that we drive out of that API by making more efficient transactions with our core business. Here's some examples, again, from, say, the hospitality industry. You know, I understand your membership service level. I understand whether you're a gold, platinum, or diamond customer. And I can change what the API has to offer with you. They knew I liked to golf, but I didn't sign up for golf balls. Also, can we adjust monetization rates? Can we offer discounts because we know that this person will buy more or has bought from us in the past? Can we adapt our business rules and adapt our business model? Who should we be reaching out to? Who are effective end users of our API? Again, you have to know your customer in order to sell to your customer. So with that, you know, it wraps up where identity and APIs blended with context and intent, driven by smart analytics, can help us respond in an interactive manner rather than a static manner. You'll see the big e-commerce drivers, eBay, Amazon, Facebook, and Twitter, they know this well. They know which ads to serve to you. They know which products to show you on their web pages. Well, behind all of those web pages are APIs that know the identity of the visitors. So we're driving those decisions, and we're also providing a more compelling user experience. You know, how many times are you surfing the web and you see the same old Google ad? You know, it's not very effective. They lost touch with what I need, where I'm going, and what I want to achieve, which is where And I think you guys have a huge green field ahead of you, large opportunities to monetize APIs, drive the API economies through the intersection of identity, and thinking smart about how your business can operate in this new world where you don't have the shop retail people and the security guards, scurrying after my son Joshua. Thank you.
Perfect. Anyone have questions? We have a few minutes for questions. Anyone? All right, I've got a question. So, identity analytics, is that real, in your opinion? Is it promise?
I think many times it's not a well-defined, out-of-the-box solution. So it would go under customer relationship management. It would go under yield management, more at the vertical industry level. So there's a huge gap between vertical industry-specific scenarios and just the identity frameworks and infrastructure.
Is that a microservice?
It's a microservice in the making, and there's a huge business opportunity out there. As Andre said, there's a lot of money on the internet. It's all driven by identity. So the company that closes the gap there can be the next Google.
So does anyone want me to ask the P word? Anyone? Anyone? So how does privacy work with all of that stuff? If you're collecting it, do you feel like there's a knock-on effect to legal and to privacy policies and stuff like that, especially in consumer situations?
I think with privacy, I've had a hard time this week because I'm a very private guy. And when we talk about identities, I almost want to make my own identity up and not be able to leak my private information without my consent and without the context in which I'm operating in. Are we headed towards a police state? Are we headed towards a nanny state? Are we headed towards multinational conglomerates which are sucking all the money out of our pockets by selling us, things we don't need? So I think that the collection of information is happening, and we haven't solved how to put, all the data back in the bottle and, lock up the genie and make our environments more private again.
Right. Yeah, police state versus nanny state. That's
Which do you want?
Okay, great. Anyone want to ask a question? All right, then thank you.